So getting to the data that we collected, if we go down to where it says Salmon and Trout spreadsheet on the daily agenda, you have access to that on the Google Classroom. You can open that up and you should be looking at a document that looks like this. The first thing that I need to do is I need to copy all of this data that is in here so that I can start making my graphs. So I'm going to highlight all of the information. You need to do the same thing. Scroll all the way down. And it looks like we have around 201 data points. I'm going to copy that. You can go up to Edit, Copy, or Control C would be fine too. Now you're going to go to your Google Drive and you are going to open up your own Sheets document. Please title that Sheets your first name, followed by Salmon and Trout graphs. Your first name, Salmon and Trout graphs. Now that I have my own sheet created, I'm going to paste in all of that data that I just copied. Click off of the data. You just pasted it, click off of it so not all of it is highlighted. Go up here to the intersection of A and 1, and you'll notice if you hover your mouse over top of there, it creates a hand. I want to drag that hand down below row number 1 so that then all of my information for fish, length, location, and group number remains at the top. So if I start scrolling down through this data, I can see what's in each one of those columns. Okay? Next step is sorting the data. I want to sort our brown trout data separate from our Chinook salmon data. So I need to go down here to row number 2. I do not want to click on row number 1. I want to go down to row 2. And I want to highlight all of the data for both salmon and brown trout. So I'm just on the data itself. I'm going to go up to where it says data. And it says sort sheet. Going up to data, sort sheet. I should have the name of the fish on there as well. So when I clicked on it, I didn't quite get the name of the fish. So I want Chinook salmon all the way over to group number. I want to highlight all the way down to the bottom of my data. So make sure you have the fish name on there as well. So this is our data for every single fish that we collected data on. Once I have everything highlighted, I jump up to the Data tab. And I want to sort range, column A, because I want to separate out brown trout from Chinook salmon. Column A to Z. So when I click on that, what it did was it sorted all of our brown trout first, and then our Chinook salmon. So everything's sorted nice and neat, brown trout and salmon separate. So say now I want to take and I want to sort my brown trout from the smallest fish to the largest fish. I would go to row 2 again, highlight my data, just for the brown trout. There's my data for just the brown trout. I then go up to the data tab again, and it says sort range. Instead of clicking on column A, I don't want column A because I want to sort it now by the length. And so I want to go over here to where it says advanced range sorting options, and I can change column A to column B, which is my size of fish, and then I can sort that as well. And what that did was it just put all of my brown trout, which is what I just highlighted, in lengths from the smallest up to the largest. And I could do the exact same thing with all of the Chinook salmon data. I can highlight all the Chinook salmon. I can go up to data, sort range, advanced range sorting. I want to sort them by column B, which is the length of the fish. I want it A to Z, which is smallest to largest. Sort. And now I have all of that data nice and neat and organized. All right. The next step is for us to build our graphs. And specifically, we want to build some box and whisker plots. So we need some data points to work with out of the data that we have. So we are going to go off to the side, and everyone go over to column G, row 2. And let's type in right there, minimum. And then let's go over to column H, row number 2, and type in lower quartile, Q-U-A-R-T-I-L-E. So in I2, median. In J2, upper quartile. And then in K2, we want maximum. For column F, row 3, type in brown trout data. Or you can just type in brown trout. We're going to use a couple of codes that are built into Google Sheets to figure out the minimum. Because we sorted this, we can easily identify what our minimum length is. Our minimum length for brown trout is 1 inch. So we could just type in 1 inch. If we had a really large data set that we didn't organize, we might want to use the following function. Equals MIN open parentheses, and I'm going to highlight B2 all the way down to the end of my brown trout data. And that is at B42. I can close my brackets, and now it has automatically put in the data point of 1 inch. We're going to move on to entering a code for the lower quartile. Our code for the lower quartile is equals QUAR, and you can see where that quartile is popping up a code. I want to choose that code. So we have quartile, open parentheses, B2, colon, it's a dot above another dot, to B42, because that's the data that we're working with, it's just the brown trout data, comma 1 for the first quartile, close your parentheses, and you can click enter. It has now calculated our lower quartile. All right, in order to make this a little easier on ourselves, we are going to copy that entire code, and we're going to go over here to the upper quartile one, and we are going to paste it. Now, I just pasted the code, but I want the upper quartile, so it should still read equals quartile B2 to B42. That's the data we're working with. But instead of comma 1, I want the third quartile, the upper quartile. So I want to change that to comma 3 and push enter. The next thing we need to determine is the median. In order to determine the median from the data, we need to put in the code equals median. And again, it is B2 colon B42. That's where all of our data is. Close brackets, enter. And now it has determined the median of my data that I have. Finally, maximum. Maximum is equals MAX. And my maximum is going to be from B2 to B42. Close brackets, enter. It now has created all of the data I need for building my box and whisker plot. So I now have my data, my minimum size fish for brown trout, my maximum size fish for brown trout, the lower quartile, the upper quartile, and the median. I want to highlight all this data. You can highlight the maximum and the minimum. So row 2, as well as the data from row 3 for our trout. I'm going to go up to insert, and I'm going to come down to chart. So highlight my data, insert, chart. And you'll notice when you first click on it, it's going to create, oh, mine didn't. It'll probably create a bar chart for you. Okay, if it creates a bar chart for you, I'm going to go over here to where it says bar chart, and I'm going to scroll all the way down to where it says candlestick chart. Click here on the right hand side, double click on your chart. Make sure it's highlighted for setup. Scroll all the way down. And you should see candlestick chart. All right, if your graph is giving you a different name, let's call it brown trout lengths. So we just changed the name to brown trout lengths 2022. You will notice, though, this data isn't completely accurate. What it's doing is it's pulling the median. And I don't want the median for my upper quartile and for my maximum. So inside of this chart, under the setup section, I need to go down to where it says close, and I need to choose the data for close from J3. And then my close of the entire whisker should be maximum. So down where it says open, where it says close, close should be your J3. Your high should be your maximum, which is K3. And you should have a box and whisker that looks something like this. What this is telling you is our smallest fish was 1 inch. Coincidentally, our lowest quartile, because we had a whole bunch of fish that were 1 inch, the lower quartile equals the lowest size, the minimum. The majority of our fish fell between 1.875 inches and 1 inch. And then we had this weird outlier where we had one fish, the maximum size was 3.5. And so that's what the whisker coming off of the box represents. Now I want to do the same thing with the data for the salmon. So go up, highlight all of that data that we just worked with to create our box and whisker, and copy that. I would leave it right where it's at. Leave your box and whisker plot right where it is, and then scroll down below it. And like I'm down at F23. And I'm going to paste that information that I just copied from up above down below. But I want to change this because I want to create a box and whisker for my salmon. So I'm going to change brown trout to Chinook salmon. Now I want to go in and I want to change the data to just the Chinook salmon. And if I go over, you will notice if I scroll down, my Chinook salmon data starts at B43. And if I keep going down, it ends at B201. So because I just copied and pasted this information with the codes already in it, all I have to do is click on the box for the minimum, and I can change this B, in this case it said B23 for me. I want to change that to B43 down to B201. So now it's pulling the data just from the Chinook salmon section. So the code should be B43 colon B201. And now I'm looking at just the data that we've collected on Chinook salmon. And for each one of these codes, I'm going to go in and I'm going to put B43 to B201 so that the data that is being used is from the section of the data table that is our salmon data. So once I get that done, I have the following data. My minimum size for our salmon was 1.5 inches. Our lower quartile was 2.5 inches. The median size of our fish was 3. Our upper quartile was 3.9375. And our maximum is 5 inches. So once I changed all my data, those are the data points that I'm getting. My next step is going to be make another box and whisker plot. So I'm going to highlight Chinook salmon all the way over to 5. I'm going to go up to Insert, Chart. And it's going to insert a new chart for me. I'm going to drag and I'm going to put this chart down below my data so I can easily work with it. I'm going to title it Chinook Salmon Lengths 2022. Now notice that in my chart, when I put this together, it's not going all the way up to 5 inches for my whisker coming off of the box. So again, I got to go in. I have to manipulate the data a little bit. I click on the setup. I'm going to go down here to where it says close. My close is my upper quartile, which is J, in this case for me, 24. So I need to change that I-24 to J-24. My high is the end of the whisker, so I need to change J-24 to, in this case, mine is K-24. And now I've got a box and a whisker. What the data is telling me is I have the largest fish that we released was 5 inches. The smallest fish that we released was 1.5 inch. The majority of our fish, the upper quartile and the lower quartile, span from 2.5 inches up to 3.9 inches. That's what the data is telling me. We now have box and whisker plots that we can enter into our spreadsheet.